Alright, welcome back. Today we're going to be working on the back. So when we're doing the muscles on the spine, we want to work on either side of the spine. So there are these little points called spinous processes that run all the way down your spine. We do not want to put direct pressure on these because it's not going to feel very good at all. Now again, we want to work within our pain limits, but if anything is sharp or pinching, it probably means you're on one of these bones. So all you want to do is basically shift your contact point a little bit off to the side. So that being said, first points we're going to be working on are in the multifidi. So these are very thick, large muscles that go into our low back. And we're going to use the lacrosse ball, and essentially we're going to be kind of tucking the ball right in between your pelvic bone, basically your hip bone here, and the spinous processes of the spine. So there's going to be a little pocket right in through there. Now again, if this lacrosse ball is too intense, you may want to start with a tennis ball until your body can withstand that pressure. Alright, so we're going to start up against a wall. Alright, so we're going to take our ball here, and we're going to place the ball basically into the small of our back. And what you can feel for are those little dimples on your back. And you want the ball to go between the spine, which is kind of that groove in the middle of your back, and the dimple. So right about in there. Now from this position, what I can do is take my opposite leg. So if I'm working on the right or the left side of my spine, I'm going to use my right leg to apply the pressure. And this left leg is going to actually relax and settle. Now the further away my foot is, the more pressure I'm going to be able to apply. So you can kind of gauge how much pressure you're putting in by sliding this front foot out a little bit more. Now again, once we're in that position, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to play around with our pelvic tilting. So that means we're going to take our tailbone, we're going to tuck underneath, and that's what's going to start to create some of that shearing force. So the outside foot's creating the pressure into the ball, and then we're going to tuck our tailbone underneath us to create that gliding sensation into the muscle and the fascia. So once we're there, we're going to start to breathe. Now for me, I feel a pretty significant what's called a trigger point. So when I press into the muscle, I feel some radiating discomfort going into my hip on that side. Totally normal when that happens. Again, it's not like a shooting electrical feeling at all. It's like a dull, achy, spreading sensation. So I'm just going to hang out into that. I can gauge my tension by either pulling my tailbone underneath me a little more or letting my tailbone relax behind me a little bit. Again, we're just trying to find that 5 to 10, 5 out of 10 on a pain scale. Nothing above that, maybe going to 6, but I'm trying to gauge that tension by using my tailbone position to fix the pressure that I'm on. All right, again, we're just breathing. All the way in, all the way out. Perfect. Now let's switch sides. So again, we're going to find that dimple in the back, that groove in the back where the spine is. We're going to go right in between those 2 points. And my opposite leg is going to come out, so now I'm working the right side of my low back. I'm going to sink in gently until I start to feel that dull, achy, spreading sensation. And you can scan a little bit, up, down, side to side. You're not going to have to go too much side to side because you got maybe a couple inches of muscle on either side of the spine to work with. There's my point. So I'm going to sink in a little more pressure on this front leg. I'm going to take a deep breath and out. Good. Now I'm going to play around with the tension, tucking my tailbone underneath me and relax my shoulders, and let's just go ahead and breathe into this one. In and out. Again, dull, achy, spreading sensations. Sometimes we can get radiating discomfort into the hip or even down into the thigh. If it's too uncomfortable, again, either use a softer tool like a tennis ball or a racquetball versus the lacrosse ball. Excellent. We're going to come out of that nice and easy. So we're only spending 1 to 2 minutes on each spot. So now I'm going to bring the ball up a little bit higher, so maybe about 4 fingers up from the point I was just at. And this is going to bring us to where we call our thoracolumbar junction. So that's the junction between our thoracic spine, which has our ribs in it, and our lumbar spine. This is a very, very tight area for most people, and it can actually refer pain down into the SI joints or the hip into that same side. So again, very similar movement on this one. Use the opposite leg, relax the same side leg. Once we find our point, we're going to lift the chest up a little bit, tuck the tailbone underneath, and apply that pressure. And now we're going to breathe. So with this one, you can actually use the breath to create some of that shearing force a little bit, because now the ribs are going to be moving those tissues a little bit more than they were down lower into the pelvis. Nice big breath. Good, and out. And you'll find as you breathe out, you can kind of sink in a little bit more. And out. Perfect. One more breath. Excellent. All right, let's switch sides. So we're right off to the side of the spine. We're not on the ribs. We're kind of in this little pocket where the ribs come around and the spine is. So it creates a little triangle. We want to be right up into that little pocket where you're not on your ribs and you're not on your spine. All right, again, opposite leg's going to come in front. Relax the side that we're working on. So for me, it's to the right side now. I'm going to scan a little bit. This is pretty tight for me here. And we're going to take it some nice deep breaths. All the way in, all the way out. We're kind of lifting the rib cage up, getting some length into that tissue to create that shearing force where the ball's pinning the superficial tissues. Good. You can play around with the tailbone to increase tension as well. So for me, I'm tucking the tailbone underneath me. Good. Again. And out. Let's do one more big breath. And out. Wonderful. Now we're going to move up the back, up into that middle between your shoulder blades region where a lot of people get their trigger points. Especially if we're sitting at a desk all day, we're rounded, those tissues are locked in a long position and they get trigger points scattered throughout the muscle. So for me, when we're using the wall, the best way for me to do this is actually use my shoulder to kind of roll, pin the ball into the wall, and then roll it until that ball kind of falls in between my shoulder blade and my spine. Again, we don't want to be on the spine itself, we just want to be in that little groove between your shoulder blade and your spine. So from there I can scan up and down, side to side. Good. Now it doesn't really matter which side leg you use on this one. We can still use the opposite side, but if it feels better for you to use the same side leg, that's totally fine. But we want that slot-legged stance. You don't want your legs out in front because we want to be nice and balanced and stable on this. So we're scanning up and down, side to side. There's a nice point. Now sometimes these points can actually refer either down into the shoulder or up into the head. So shoulder pain, arm pain, numbness, tingling, all those things can happen when we have trigger points between the shoulder blades. There we go, found my point. Now to increase tension, once we've found the point, we're sinking in, we're going to use our breath first, get the ribs to expand and contract. So that for me increased some pretty decent tension. I'm at about a 5 right there, so I'm going to do one more breath. And out. And that started to release a little bit. So now I can increase tension by taking my same side hand, so we're still working on the left side. I'm going to bring this hand across to my shoulder. And that's going to basically stretch the muscles and the fascia where the ball is, kind of pulling the shoulder blade out and away from the spine. Good, nice deep breath. And out. And now we can rotate the head away and look down, and that's going to add a little more tension into that same tissue. Perfect. And let's go to the other side. So again, we're going to use the ball on the shoulder, roll until we get in between the shoulder blade and the spine, and then from there we're going to start our scan. Up, down, side to side. Got a nice little nugget on that right shoulder blade there. Oh yeah. For me, I start to feel that kind of refer, some dull achiness into my shoulder on this side. even getting a little numbness tingling into my fingers, which that's okay, as long as when we're done it goes away and it doesn't get too uncomfortable for you. This is even going up into my head a little bit. So that's a pretty significant trigger point that I'm on right now. So I'm just gonna hang out. I'm gonna back off a little bit because I'm getting a lot of referral patterns coming out. So just backing off my pressure. I wanna be nice to myself here. Nice deep breaths. And out. And when we're breathing, just when we breathe out, just think of dropping all the tension in your body and out. And then the body just kind of sink into the ball. Now again, increase tension. I'm going to bring that hand across. Whoo, goodness. Maybe not. That's a little much. Back off. There we go. Deep breath. And out. Good. Now I can rotate away and look down if I need to, which I really don't need to on this one. But that would be the other way to increase the tension on these spots here. Excellent. And then come out nice and easy. That was a pretty intense one. So for me, as a chiropractor, I'm always working through here. So those muscles are usually locked out long for me personally, very similar to computer work. So it's really important for me personally to get in there and work out those muscles, especially after a long shift at the office. Now the next one we're going to be doing, we're going to be on the ground to start working the spot basically above the shoulder blades, between the shoulder blade and the neck. So kind of like, we call that the cervico-thoracic junction. So between the cervical spine, which is your neck, and your thoracic spine where the ribs are. So let's go down to the ground. All right, now that we're down on the ground, we're going to take our ball and we're going to place it right at the base of our neck. Now you'll notice that once I'm here, it's really hard for me to get pressure. I really don't feel much. The ball is just kind of hanging out in this little pocket, and my thoracic spine naturally curves up like this, so the ball doesn't really get a good pressure onto this area. Now to fix that, what we're going to do is push our weight into our heels. You're going to lift up, and that's going to start to roll your thoracic spine flat up against the ground. And you'll feel that pressure start to build onto the ball. Good. Once we found a good amount of pressure, you can either hold that bridge. If that's uncomfortable, you could use like your foam roller or a pillow, something like that, to hold under the hips, just like that, so we can now relax into that position. Now if we need to increase tension, we can play around with different positions of the shoulder to change that tension pattern on this area. So we can either reach through the fingertips out in this way, or we can bring that arm across like we did against the wall. For me, this is the spot right there. So I'm going to breathe into that and out. Now I can play around with tension again with rotation of the neck. We can rotate away, we can rotate towards. Again, everybody's going to be a little bit different as to what direction feels like they get that most dull, achy 5 to 6 out of 10 on a pain scale. So you just got to fine tune with different movements and play around. But these are the general movements you're going to want to try first. It's reaching through the arm, up and down, arm across. We can also play with head rotation. Good. Now we're going to slowly come out of that, and let's go to the other side. So again, we're going to use our hand, just place the ball at the base of the neck. So we're not on the spine, we're just off to the side. We're not on the shoulder blade, we're kind of right in between those areas. And now if I don't have enough pressure in this position, slowly I'm going to start to press my heels into the ground, lift up, there's my pressure. I can slide either a pillow, foam roller, something under my hips to hold that position. And then I can start to play around with my tension. Where is it going to be? And this one, bring the hand towards the chest, right there. And we're going to do our breaths. Good, and out. So when you're breathing, try to breathe into the area where the ball is. I know that sounds kind of weird to breathe into your shoulder, but kind of bring your focus into that area and use those ribs to expand and contract the tissue. And that's going to be the best way to get that shearing force and start to open up that fascia. Let's go one more. And out. Perfect. One more. Now that's gone from about a 5 or 6 down to about a 2, maybe a 3. So 50% reduction, that's a good therapeutic result, so we'll call that a good therapy session on that point. All right, now one more point we're gonna do is gonna be at the base of the skull, kind of up in the neck through here. Now, I found that the best way to do this is to use like a yoga block. If you don't have anything like that, you can use a couple stacked like dictionaries or encyclopedias that you got laying around. But something relatively high so that when you're laying on it, your head's gonna go into a little bit of flexion. So when we're in this position, we're actually gonna place the ball at the base of the neck, right at the skull point, and let the chin relax downward. Now from this position, if you're feeling dizzy or feeling like you're getting like lightheaded, just back off. It's not the greatest position for you. So I want you to be very careful when going into deep flexion or extension in the neck and applying pressure. But for me, I'm able to feel that pressure pretty quickly. Now, trigger points at the base of the skull commonly will refer up into the head. Sometimes you'll feel like it's a headache behind the eyes. So this is a source for headaches for a lot of people. So once we're in there, we can play around with tension by tucking the chin down, lifting the chin up, and we can play with rotating back and forth either side. So for me, right about there, and I'm gonna do some breaths here. Now we don't wanna stay in this position for too long. It's not the greatest position for the neck, but it's one of the best ways to open up that fascia at the base of the skull. Again, and out. Now we'll go to the other side. Nice and easy. Chin's gonna tuck down. I'm gonna rotate, look up, look down, find my point. Once I'm there, I'm gonna breathe. So you'll actually feel when you're breathing, the tension will start to change a little bit. And that's because when we breathe, our sacrum, which is the base of our spine, and our occiput will start to flex and extend as we breathe. So using that breath not only helps your body relax, but it actually helps to increase tension by moving the body physically. Right there. And I get a little referral up into the temple area. Again, that's okay, just hang out. If it's too sharp, too stabbing, pulsing, back off a little bit. Again, you can always use a softer ball, like a tennis ball, racket ball. Perfect. Slowly remove the ball and the block. Relax for a moment. Roll your knees side to side. Just kind of feel that mobility we just created, working our way from the bottom up. Now, if you didn't want to use the wall for the lower back, you could always do this laying down. Very similar concept. We're going to place that ball right into that little pocket between your SI joint and your spine. We're going to sink in. And now to increase tension, we can do a couple different things. Again, use the tailbone, tuck underneath. But we can also take that same side leg and pull up towards your chest. Now this is a lot more intense than doing this up against the wall. So I want you to be very, very careful of how much pressure you're putting into the low back into this extension position. If it's too much, use the wall first, and then slowly, once that's feeling like you're not able to get enough pressure, then bring it down to the ground. Okay, and you can move that up into the TL junction, basically where your ribs meet the spine, and same exact concept. First you start with pelvic tilts, you tuck the tailbone, that's one way to increase tension, and then bringing the knee up towards the chest. And you can kind of use a combination between that tucking, tilting of the pelvis, and the leg movement towards the chest to play with the tension. Again, breath is one of the best ways to get that tissue moving. So again, that's just a variation on the low back technique. With all these, again, I want you to be very, very careful. Do not push too hard. These can hurt you if you're on the point for too long, or you add too much tension and you're entering that 7, 8, 9 out of 10 on a pain scale. You could actually damage tissue. So the idea is not to hurt yourself, because you'll get to that point where it's like, oh, it hurts so good. But don't push too hard. It's better that you do this more frequently, less intense, than getting one really long, intense session where now you're bruised for 4 or 5 days and you can't do it again. So keep that in mind as you're working on these. Be safe, have fun, get at it. I'll see you next time with the ball.